This evening, we're going to get into this program. We're waiting for a couple of the speakers who haven't arrived yet, and we wanted them to actually be the first to make their presentations. But since they haven't gotten here yet, we're going to have to start the program because it's indeed a very important program and one that we feel that you will go away with a lot of information, not that will entertain you, but information that you'll be able to utilize into trying to bring about the kind of radical social transformation we need among our people at this time. This is the fourth in a series of African History Month programs. And of course, we're not going to allow for March or the change of a month to stop us from what we are trying to do, because African history goes on. As one slogan says, before there was an American history, there was an African history. Before anybody even heard of America, African people were making history. So therefore, we intend to continue to make history, because what is history but actually the presence of another time? Most people get caught up into history to the point where they want to live in one period, but mentally and psychologically they're in another period, and a period that can't help them except to know that we once were there and we once did some great things. But what are you doing today? And so we're trying to bring about some relevant type of material that we feel is historically correct based on our values in the past, but also taking into account the contemporary period for which we live and trying to adapt what we have experienced in the past in order for us to better understand our present predicament and to be able to plan for a better future. A friend once told me many years ago that advice is free, you pay for experience. I think you can't get much deeper than that. Advice is free. Benny knows what I'm talking about, Jimmy Abu. That was one of his major slogans, that advice is free, you pay for experience. So therefore, we try to give you the benefits of our own experiences, hoping that you won't have to go through the same changes that we did in order to get the desired result that will show that you have understood the kind of forces that are arrayed against us and be able to deal with them. This particular program we call How White Society Promotes Violence Within the African Community, Psychological Operations on the State Level Towards Auto-Destructive Behavior. And simply put, it means, of course, that while we don't try to blame or put the blame for our own errors on just because white people are controlling the situation, but there is a certain amount of emphasis that has to be put toward the society we live in order to understand the reason we react and the way we do, and why we are always moving toward auto-destructive behavior. That is a self-destructive behavior. That particular behavior pattern that is a learned behavior pattern is one that we could do without, but at the same time we find that it seems that more and more that not only do we see in the U.S. society this particular phenomena, but you can look in the Caribbean, particularly what happened in Jamaica, in the elections between Manley and Siaga, and in the ongoing struggle between the neo-colonialist reactionary forces and those people who would opt for progress. We can see it all over Africa in many, many states, and we can see it even in the Arab world, just recently in the Persian Gulf, and that's still to be understood, and we will deal with some of that tonight as we have been dealing for the last 6 months. And we must say that some of the dire predictions that we came up with have come to be true. At the same time, we have to understand the role that the United States played in actually setting that up, and that goes back to the title, How White Society Actually Promotes Violence. And if you look at the graphic, if you had a chance to see the circular we put out, you'll see, of course, the chalk line, which has become a familiar graphic done by the police department, where some young black man or some black woman fell in the street because of somebody who looked just like them, taking out their vengeance, their frustration, their self-hatred upon them. And then, of course, you see the old familiar sign of, or graphic, a symbol of Uncle Sam trying to induct you into the service where you'll be taught to kill other people. And then when you go to do that, if you're not kill yourself and come back to society, they will definitely create a situation where you will either die, of natural causes, in quotation mark, self-destruct, or be out there trying to kill your brother, but you will not gain anything for what you have done for these other people. And then, of course, the last is one of the new parodies, I guess you would say, on the baseball card phenomena, where they now have cards with militarists, and of course the one that really deals with our people is the one of Colin Powell, who we'll be dealing with also tonight. So these are the things that we would like for you to be prepared for tonight, and hopefully before the night is over, you'll get a better understanding of some of the players and some of the reasons why we find ourselves gathering to hear a discussion of this sort, because you know that it's a very real thing that we have to deal with. So without any further ado, I'd like to present the first speaker, somebody who you're familiar with, who has been lecturing in this community since 1954, when he first arrived from Texas, the same year that Malcolm X arrived from the Midwest to take up, the education process in New York City. And Robert Assamandises Harris, a longtime Orthodox African nationalist, and was one of the street speakers for the African Nationalist Pioneer Movement, and has continued to be a very productive member in African nationalism, publishing, producing records, tapes, and everything else he can to try to get the message across. So would you welcome, without any further ado, Brother Robert Assamandises Harris.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Brother Ilambe. As I usually open up, I'm always inspired to be on a program that's promoted by Ilambe and the Patrice Lumumba Coalition, and to work with him on the many projects that we have worked together in the interest of elevating the consciousness of our people. The subject tonight, how white society promotes violence within the African communities, psychological operations on the state level towards auto-destructive behavior. I'm quite sure that a longtime friend and the main speaker tonight, Dr. Amos Wilson, is going to give you a fundamental foundation to understand that the likes of which you will never hear from nobody else. Because no one else but a few of us are really interested in solving the problems confronting African people, particularly here in the United States of America. The psychological operations on the state level is a design that is put out by powerful people to create concepts, thoughts in the minds of African people that would be negative. And naturally, if you have negative thoughts, you're going to have negative behavior. You don't even have to guess about that. That's an automatic. That's where the auto-destructive behavior come into being. And as Ilambe brought out, this is in commemoration of African History Month, or months, being that we are not inhibited to do what nobody tell us to do but ourselves. We talk about our history anytime we feel like it, without any apology. It might attack you if you try to stop me from talking about it. And so we would have to get an understanding on how white society promotes violence within the African communities. Just going to divert back to some of the thoughts that came out of the meeting last week that was so amply brought out that this country, United States of America, in which we are dwelling in at this particular time, it is created to give you mixed emotions, split loyalties, to find out whether you're worth anything or you can be bought. Why? Because it was brought out that only 2% of the ruling white people control 90% of this wealth in this country. Now that's a given, that's a fact. We only make up 5 to 7% of the world's population. And so we amply bring out to you that this country is the United States of Europe. This is the United States of Europe. And they control 80% of the world's wealth. Now, that fact alone, meaning that 2% of the white population control all of the 90% of the money, and we gave you a breakdown on their psychological breakdown on their traits. I'm going to repeat it so that you can understand what kind of monsters that we are dealing with. In addition, we want to look at the fact that these criminals that run this stolen land society control 80% of the world's wealth, and therefore its markets are overflowing, not to be compared with no other place in this world. And that is a psychological stimuli in itself. Because some of you who have come from other places or who have ventured out to other places, and you find out that when you leave the United States of America, you usually enter the wretched of the earth. Because what is left, all the stolen stuff is here. And if 5% is controlling 80% of the world's wealth, that means 95% is hustling and scrambling for the other 20%. And half of that goes to the hungry Europeans, their mother. And so by the time it get to you, you have to deal in decimals or fractions. And you have to be deep into them at that, because you near about no whole number in your share of the world's wealth. And so consequently, you don't have to be no mathematician or economist to know that if you put enough food in a place for 10 people to survive off, and you throw 100 people in there, you know what's going to happen. The end will be cannibalism, not to mention killing each other for that 10%. And so it is in the African communities. That is why somebody could sell you a bill of goods of spiritualism, because you don't know how in the hell you making it. You couldn't explain that if your whole family's life depend upon it. You can't say, well, we making that as a race because our agriculture system is producing the food that we need to keep us alive. Or our textile mills are grinding out the cloth that see that we won't be naked. And our builders is building the shelters so they won't be homeless. And our soldiers is preparing to protect us while we carry on our peaceful endeavors. Now that is not our plight. That's a normal plight. And it's normalcy that we have been trained, monitored, terrorized into a negative behavior pattern. That's why we must dwell in a little history, because it was a criminal act that caused you and I to be on this spot today, a thief, a rogue, a kidnapper went into our homeland and stole our ancestors and brought us into the homeland of the red people. This land was no free land. There's no free land in the world. All land belongs to somebody. You have to learn something about geography and ethnology and government. I know that's new words that you don't want to put in your head. Then you will understand that there's no free land in this world. The way the white man roams around, you would think it's free land. But as you see how he goes, he don't go trying to lecture. He carry his killing machine with him. You either submit to me or die, and that's his philosophy. So we were brought here in the beginning to be underlings. And regardless of how much a genius you might be, environment plays a major part in shaping your life, your personality, and determine whether you're going to be what you're going to be. We were brought here against our will and put into an inferior position. Normal thoughts were denied us through terror, through the practice of genocide. Our forebears were forced to denounce themselves. And that became the opinions and habits of our people during this long sojourn under the domination of these Europeans here in these so-called Americas. And so African people learn how to think non-African. That's abnormality right there. Here you are, Africans, but as they look at you and observe your thoughts and your behavior, nobody don't know what the hell you are. Because you're not acting African. So you're acting abnormal. And so the slave system was built upon white supremacy and black inferiority. And the country was built upon that. And to be loyal to this society, you had to be loyal to that philosophical thought that white is supreme and black is inferior. And over the 400 years that we've been here, that has been the thought pattern and caused all the psychological disturbances that we as a people, we normally Africans, we're supposed to act and think African. If we Africans and we acting and thinking any other kind of way, we are abnormal. Which way are you acting and thinking? We need to take some self-study of ourselves. As I said, I'm quite sure you're going to get a thorough breakdown on it. But we have to understand that the psychological damage that has been done to us during the slave era, during the colonial era and the neo-colonial era has never been corrected. And we are operating through a confused, frustrated, psychological expression. Wrong thoughts. Long time ago, the great thinkers of our race here, from Marcus Garvey on up to the people who was fighting for our freedom, they isolated the problem confronting the African peoples in the Americas as primarily an economic and psychological problem. And we was also taught that the problem tell you the nature of the solution. If you have a psychological problem, you got to have a psychological solution. You can't take no football and solve no sports or no sociology or even politics. You have to deal with psychology. And what is psychology? It's even more not to study behavior, it's the study of thinking too. Thinking and acting. Not just behaving, but thinking and acting. And so understanding that man is a thinker and an actor, and he usually think before he acts when he do something normal. Of course, the thinking part, we haven't been reintroduced to that yet. So we just act. The European in his terror, control of us, he destroyed the mentality of the Africans during the time of his slave era. He told you you wasn't no more African. And if you tried to act African, he would kill you. If you talked African, you died. If you danced African, you died. If you worshiped African, you died. And through 244 years of white horror, terror, murder, there isn't a crime conceived by the human mind or in the annals of history that low-life, foul animal did not commit on our people in breaking them into the docile, passive people that they are today. Our task is not to prevent that. Our task is to correct that. That's already done happened. Environment. Naturally, the black kid is born free of that. But what kind of chance does he have if the environment stays like it is? Normally, there's an Uncle Tom as a daddy and an angel mama as a mama. How in the hell he gonna make it through that? Then they gonna introduce him to European behavior patterns and thoughts. No Swahili, no Igbo, no Yoruba, English, the master's language. So he'll know everything you're saying. And if I catch you even thinking that you have another language, you're gonna die. And they did that long enough until it became habits. You know what a habit is? You ask the junkie what a habit is. Opinions that you actually thought, and some of you still believe, that white is supreme and white is right. Because after you saw what he did to Saddam Hussein, I can understand why you're scared of this monster. I mean, the world recognizes we have a scourge on this earth that we have to get rid of. And so he installed negative thoughts into our head, and through terror for 250 years, and then he could let you go because you already housebroken you. You were turned from Africans to Negroes and to Afros, West Indians, Black Latinos, and British subjects and French subjects, and subject to anything the white man want to do to you. And you have never corrected that. That's the psychological problem. You're thinking wrong. You got white thoughts in your black heads. And I have nothing against the curricular conclusion. They say we're against that. We're just scientists. You can't include no goodness with rottenness. If you take a glass of cyanide and pour it half out and fill it up with vitamins and juices and minerals, it's still poison. Those of you who haven't heard in some mazing, you have to know the enemy. And the enemy is European imperialism. His doctrine is white supremacy. And if you understand him, you'll understand what you got to do to solve your problems. Number one, as I stated, he is a megalomaniac. The man is suffering from psychological disorders that make him believe that he's the cream of mankind. And everybody in it is under him. And everything in it and everybody in it is his. Unless you introduce him to death and pain, then he understands that, oh yeah, you have a right to live on this earth too. But with all our buck dancing and shuffling and nonviolence, he know he got a good thing forever. Because he's not going to move unless you force him to move. He's a megalomaniac. And he has had 400 years of enjoying that lie over you, and you have helped him by denouncing yourself, hating yourself, and being the staunchest supporters for him and his control over you. And that's been going on for the last 400 years. In addition, he is a homicidal maniac. As I said, he loves killing. Killing to him is like sex to us. Something good, you know. He has to kill. When Saddam said, well, okay, let's call it off. He said, no, they don't call it off. I ain't killed enough of y'all yet. And besides, I got some niggas out here I ain't killed yet. See, Johnson taught him, you don't have to go around lynching them one at a time. Put a lot of Yankee Doodle dumb in them and a lot of Americana into them youth and let him know that, oh, this is free America. You're fighting for your country. You know, you're a great man. Look at you. Your people are going to be proud of you. And unfortunately, his angel mama, wife, and mama, they said, boy, go. If you get killed, you worth $40,000, $20,000. And I'll be waiting for them 2 military men to come knock on my door and give me the good news. And really, otherwise you stop him from going. You know, you like the cracker, you ain't got no lose. In addition to his homicidal maniac, the man has to steal. He's a kleptomaniac. He don't share his with nobody. Who do the white men share Europe with? Nobody. All of Europe is ran by Europeans. So why the hell do you think we so ignorant we think we want to share our land with him? You know, we wouldn't share it anyhow because that's a poorhouse and our homeland is the richest land in the world. In addition to being a kleptomaniac, he's a pathological liar. That he's going to lie. There's no need you trying to show him no truth, trying to show him the facts. Negro say, I'm going to prove it to him, I'm going to show him what he did. Cracker said, what's wrong with this damn fool? I did it. I need somebody to tell me what I did when I did it. You know I put my foot up his rear end and rubbed his head. He didn't have to remind me of that. You know? Unless he asked me to do it again. And to sum it up, he's a parasite. Now here you got a megalomaniac, a homicidal maniac, a pathological liar, a kleptomaniac, and a parasite all wrapped up in one. How the hell are you going to deal with that? Unless you're dealing with it like the Chinese deal with it. If I catch you too close to me, you die. Don't get no designs on me, my people, or my resources. And if you do, I heard Bush always saying, God bless America. How the hell could he say that? If God bless America, God is one of the biggest rogues and thieves that I've ever known. I could never believe in that damn God. If he bless America. Those crackers came over and killed out these red people, took over their land and set up a legal white government and named it after a white criminal named America. And set up an international European criminal syndicate. This is the fence, where all the stolen goods is brought. I know y'all know it, most of y'all come off the streets like I do. A fence is one who buys stolen goods, and he usually ends up with all the goodies because he gives the thief a little bit for a whole lot. England, France, Germany, Canada, and the rest of them hoodlums are the thieves. And as they go around Africa, Asia, Latin America, and other people's land, they steal the people's raw materials and natural resources, and they bring it here. Because you try to make like Europe and America's not the same. They say, you heard what the European forces do? Yeah, Bush is a European. Don't you believe that he's anything else but a European? And he's looking out for Europeans. And so consequently, as I said, the psychological problem is based upon how we think and how we act. In closing, our economic life is not organized. That's why we're suffering. We must organize our economic life. Our psychological life is not organized, and we must organize our psychological life. That's no magic, that's science. All normal people is doing what we advocate that we as a people do. On the local level, they know you dead. They know it's something seriously wrong with you, that you got your nose in everybody else's business, and you walking around the biggest victim of white psychology and white propaganda the world has ever known. In your communities, you're the only one too scared to correct your behavior pattern and thinking pattern to adjust your economic life so that it will reflect the same type of intelligence that the other racial and ethnic communities reflect. Meaning that, don't take my word for it, go to Chinatown and observe how those Chinese run the Chinese community. 95% of every dollar come in there stay and circulate among the China. Some of it go to the meat people, some go to the clothing people, some go to the import-exporters, some go to the real estate man, some go to the doctor. The same pattern is in the Italian community, the Jewish community. The only people that is abnormal in this expression and thinking is our people. And that's the basic thing. If we thought economically like everybody else, we would say we must control 95% of the business life in our community. That's not a hard job to do if we had free thoughts. And we could do it in 30 to 60 days. All you need to do is don't go in the non-African people stores in your community. And we call it upon the black soldiers that let's get together and stop them from going into the stores. They don't need to pick in the alien people. You need to take that picket and hit that black consumer side the head with it for trying to go in the store and give the people the money. That's the damn traitor. That's the enemy. You the one that keep the crackers and the rest of them up here because you're running there and saying, I gotta give Massa the money. I gotta give Massa the money. The only animal in the world behave like that in this city. When the Chinese woman get up in the morning, she say, I gotta go give this to another Chinaman, whatever I need. The Italian woman, she get up in the morning, I'm gonna give this to an Italian woman. The Jew, naturally everything is kosher with them all the way. Only animal in the world. And that's why you can be sold a bill of goods. No education system ain't worth a damn unless it's preparing your youth to run the commerce, business life, and body politics of the community in which you live. We know we'll have our educational thing in order when enough young black men and women to get up and say, did we produce enough food to see that every African ate today? Did we weave enough cloth to see that they will not be naked? Did we build enough shelters they won't be homeless? It's where they can carry out their other endeavors in a protective manner. Did we organize our military, our armies, our navies, and our air forces? So when people try to deprive us, there'll be some punitive measures that we'll take that they wish they had never done before. Why you don't think they really tackle little Haiti? Little old nation out there, they hate the guts out of it. Why? Because it's the only nation that through their own self-determination drove the European colonialism into the sea and established an independent black nation. And they say, if you ever come down here and try to change it, we'll paint this damn island in blood. We'll raise so much havoc in here and we'll create so much terror until the world won't stop shaking for the next 10,000 years if you try to take this away from us. And the cracker said, well, we'll pass that one up. We'll look upon them like we look upon the Chinamans and the rest of them, because somebody there will kill us if we go into there. They look like them Negroes, but they ain't acting like them Negroes. Because you mess this white man up a lot of times. He rub your head, your eyes and balls. Then he see another black man, he said, that look like Mose. He go to rub his head and get his arm broke. Get killed. You know, you didn't made a fool out of this white man by being his flunky and doing his thinking and doing his bidding. And now, you have to look at the world. The world is open to you now. This is not slavery anymore. We don't have to hang out here under white domination and white control. Africa's wide open now, particularly Namibia. And you have to look into that nation. That nation needs you, and you need it. It could really change your whole situation. And so we have to get our thoughts together. Brother Lambe, myself, and the Patrice Lumumba Coalition and the United Black Organization together, we put together Marcus Garvey, Carlos Cook's Malcolm X Learning Center at 243 West 125th Street. From that Learning Center, we will naturally promote these programs and even more extensive programs. We also, you'll be able to come there and learn about those three men. We're launching the Orthodox Nationalist program from that, but at this particular time, we're doing a renovation and a cleanup job. And like everything, our ambition is big as our pockets. And this is really an African people's project. It is created not for Brother Lumbe and myself, but for your children and you. And we have that. So I don't think it's out of order if you would help us do that. Now we'll be meeting up there, cleaning this place up, taking everything out of it and renovating it so it will be an international business office, a multi-purpose conference classroom, and a mini Unity African market, and a photographic studio and lab. We're doing this in a place that Brother Lambe has been maintaining consistently for the last 31 years. is a landmark in itself. And many wonderful programs came out of that studio, and many are going to come out again. One reason we having trouble, that's not garbage up there. There's a lot of documents, a lot of pictures, a lot of posters, a lot of information dealing with the history and the progress of African peoples from the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and the 100s that the European and the integrationists will never tell you about. And our people need to preserve that. So we're asking you to look into our program, and we need all the help from our people, because we understand that we can't go to freedom individually. We got to all go together, you know. And there's no need of building no cults, no building no sectarian groups and regional groups. We need a mass movement, and we want to see every African man, woman, and child free. And so, we will be speaking more on the Marcus Garvey, Carlos Cook's Malcolm X Learning Center. We're getting our literature out so that we won't have to keep talking about it. But we found out we have a literacy, we're talking about developing a literacy program for Namibia, and we've got a literacy problem here. So we will prepare one for here that will be applicable to the black people there. And we're going to really get a curricula of exclusion going there. Excluding all them lies that the crackers have put on our people's minds. And re-educate them to the past glories of their ancestors and the tremendous opportunities that Africa has to offer. So get your head straight and your body will follow. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Harris. Moving right along, I'm going to bring our next presenter, brother who I've known for quite some time and has been involved with struggle and has been having to confront the system, sometimes collectively with organizations, sometimes as an individual, and is very well versed on the situation